The Eclipse series from Phanteks has been around for a while now, long enough that Phanteks thinks it's time for a refresh. Kit Guru recently reviewed the G360A. Leo gave it the Worth Buying Award. The G500A is the bigger brother of the G360A. It's slightly taller, slightly longer, and slightly wider, which means you can cram in more hardware. But can it carry on in the footsteps of the G360A? Stick around and we'll find out. So the G500A is the latest addition to the Phanteks Eclipse series, and you can buy it in various different guises. So this one is the DRGB version. It's available in black and available in white. It comes with 3 DRGB fans in the front. It also has 2 RGB lighting zones, so one at the top and then one on top of the power supply shroud. This is available for $149.99. You can pre-order it now from overclockers.co.uk. If you don't want the version with the DRGB fans, there is a fanless version. It still has the 2 RGB lighting zones on the case though, and that is priced at $119.99, so you can add your own fans to that. Alternatively, there is a G500A Performance, which comes without any RGB lighting zones, but it does include 4 standard black M25 140mm fans, and that is priced at $139.99. And again, you can pre-order all of these from overclockers.co.uk. So let's not waste any time. Let's take a look at the exterior of the case first. You can see the front panel and the top are equipped with Phanteks Ultra Fine Performance Mesh, which mean they allow high airflow and they combine to be dust filters as well. There's no additional dust filters behind the mesh panels. Both of the side panels are hinged, so on one side you've got a tempered glass panel and that pops off on a hinge, and you can see it does have a mild tint to it. The other side panel is just a plain steel side panel, and again that's on a hinge, but it does have a bit of, shall we say, flexibility to this side panel. It's just a plain steel side panel. There's no reinforcement as such in that, so it is really quite flexible. I'm not sure how well that comes across on the camera, but there is a lot of flex in that. There's no sound deadening material on there either to give it any extra rigidity. Not quite the quality that I'm used to from Phanteks there. It's a bit of a letdown straight away, that, but it is hinged and it does remove completely as well, and you can see it is just a plain steel side panel. The front panel is pretty easy to remove as well. That just pulls off. It's just on some kind of quick release pegs down the front, and as you can see there is the ultra fine performance mesh. And on this front panel as well, that's the power button up there, and then you've got this kind of opaque bit of plastic that is a diffuser for the RGB lighting, and you can see up here is a LED strip for the RGB lighting there and the power button. With the front panel removed, you can see the 3 fans that come pre-installed. These are Phanteks N25 140mm DRGB fans. All the RGB lighting in this case works software free, so you don't have to have any software installed on your system to work the RGB lighting. It's just 2 buttons on the top of the case. There are a series of screws holding the fan bracket on here. Remove those screws, the bracket comes out, and then you can install your radiator or your fans on the bench and then screw it all back in place. You can install up to a 420mm radiator on that front panel, alternatively 340mm fans like you can see here, or you can install a 360 radiator, 320mm fans, a 240 radiator, a 280 or a 120, so that's a good configuration for the front. Latest hardware demands good cooling. 420mm radiators probably are becoming more common now, so it's good to see that you can install up to a 420mm radiator on there. In the top of the case there's space again for another radiator. Up here it's up to a 360mm radiator, so that also includes a 280, a 240, 120. You can alternatively install up to 320 or 140mm fans up in the top panel, and then at the back there's just a single fan or radiator mount. In terms of front I/O connectivity, on the top of the case there are 2 USB 3.0 Type-A ports, a single USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-C port, and a 3.5mm audio jack. The other buttons on there, as I've said earlier, are the DRGB buttons, so one is to change the mode and one is to change the colour of the RGB lighting. Internally motherboards up to eATX form factor are supported, so that also obviously includes ATX, micro ATX and mini ATX. Maximum CPU cooler height is 185mm. Maximum GPU length is 435mm, so that should allow for space to install all the latest NVIDIA 40 series cards. And then the maximum power supply length depends on how many hard drives you install. So if you've got 4 hard drive cages in there, the maximum power supply length is 195mm. But if you just have 2 hard drives installed, then it increases the power supply length to 250mm. At the front, you've got a removable fan bracket, so you can take that off and install your fans and radiators on the bench and put it back in again. This top panel also removes as well, so this is just the ventilated top panel that also acts as a dust filter. The rest of the roof is fixed in position. There's no fan bracket that you can remove there to install the radiators and fans on the top. Full cover power supply shroud. The line down here, this is the RGB lighting. There's a Phanteks logo at the front. It's one of those power supply shrouds as well with a cutout. Not sure whether I prefer them or just a solid one. The logos on the power supplies don't always line up and they don't always look great. We've got various holes for cable management. There's a couple at the bottom. There's space up at the top here, so with slots cut out there for cable management, and then all these are for cable management as well. None of them have any rubber grommets in though, they're just open cutouts out of the steel panels. Down the side of the motherboard tray here is a feature we've seen in other Phanteks Eclipse cases. These plastic panels, they kind of slide about and you can hide cables and lock them off there, or alternatively you can remove the screw out of the back, slide them to the front, and then these come out completely. And you get with the case a couple of these hard drive brackets which you then can put in place, and you can have hard drives installed at the front there. You get 2 of these with the case, but you can install up to 10 3.5-inch hard drives. You can buy these cages extra, so if you need a lot of storage, it's a good case for storage. On top of the power supply shroud, another little plastic cover. Again, this is something we've seen in Phanteks Eclipse cases before. That's just a cutout for your PCIe cable, so you can open that up, pull your PCIe cables out, connect them up to the graphics card. Around the back of the case, it's a typical and conventional layout with a 120 or 140mm fan bracket at the back, a rear I/O cutout for the motherboard, 7 PCIe slots, and then 3 vertical PCIe slots. The power supply is installed from the rear. It's one of those where you remove the little bracket, screw that to the power supply, put it all in one go, and then screw that bracket in place. Another accessory you get with the case is this vertical GPU mount. This is literally just the bracket that screws to the top of the power supply shroud. You don't get the PCIe riser, it's just the bracket. You also get the GPU anti-sag bracket. Again, this is something we've seen previously with Phanteks cases, and it seems to work to a certain extent. Around the other side of the case, it's quite a neat and tidy looking thing with these covers that will cover up the majority of the cables. These are just held in place with some clips, so you can just unclip both of these covers. And you can see as well, they've got a series of holes in here. These are for 2.5-inch SSD mounts. So in total, as well as these on the covers, you've also got 3 more SSD mounts here. These are just quickly removable ones. Screw your SSD drive to that and then just slot them back in place. So in total, you can install up to 9 2.5-inch drives in here. So up to 10 3.5-inch drives and 9 2.5-inch drives. So there's a lot of storage you can cram into this. These also remove as well. So these are again like the side panels, they're on hinges and they quite easily just remove from the hinges. Allows a bit more access into the case while you're building your system. You can see as well there's lots of Velcro straps for tying the cables down. All the cables from the front panel are pre-routed down here and behind the Velcro straps. Then you've got another channel here for your main cables like your 24-pin, maybe your PCIe cables if you want to run them over the top. These hard drive cages can also be mounted underneath the power supply shroud as well. So these two will clip together like that, and then you can fit them underneath the power supply shroud, so you get them the right way around and then they just slide into place there and lock in position. There is a couple of positions for them, so you can install up to 4 of these under there, but that will obviously limit the space you have for the power supply and for cable management. Or you can just leave it completely open if you don't need to install any 3.5 inch drives, and then there's loads of space under there for power supply and to manage all your cables. Up at the top corner here is the DRGB controller. Everything comes pre-connected to that, so the fans and the 2 RGB lighting zones from the case. You do need to connect that up to a SATA power connection, and it is a software free controller. So like I said previously, it's just controlled by the 2 buttons on the top of the case. Alternatively, if you do want to control it by software, there is a 3-pin 5V ARGB header. You connect that to your motherboard, and then you can control the RGB lighting with your motherboard software. On the underside of the case, there's not a great deal going on. You can see all the cutouts for the hard drive bays. There are 4 feet on the bottom of the case with anti-vibration rubbers. These are about 25mm tall, so should give you good ground clearance for airflow under the case into the power supply. And then at the back is a removable dust filter for the power supply fan, and then a big cutout again for the power supply intake. Phanteks has sent over some extra M25 fans just in case I need a few more for the build. These are available from OC UK now in 3 packs and in singles in 120mm and 140mm versions, and they cost around about £50 for the 3 packs. OC UK actually has an offer on at the moment. If you pre-order the G500A, they will give you a single M25 fan, which will be useful. You'll be able to put it in the back of the case as an exhaust. For the rest of the build, I'm going with an Intel stroke NVIDIA combination. I've not done an Intel build for a while. The CPU for the build is the Intel Core i9-12900K. Motherboard is an MSI MegZ690 Unify. For memory, I'm using 32GB of this Corsair Dominator Platinum RGB DDR5 6000 MHz. Graphics will be a Gigabyte Aorus RTX 3080 Master. For storage, it's a WD Black SN850 2TB. This is PCI Gen 4 M.2 NVMe. Cooling the CPU will be the Phanteks Glacier 1 360 MP, and it's the MPH model. And to power the system, it's a Phanteks Revolt Pro. This is a Seasonic OEM unit, so good quality power supply there. And it's 1000 watt, and it is 80+ gold rated, so decent power supply. So that's it, let's get on with the build, do some thermal testing and see what this case is really like. So as you can see, the build is complete. I had no real issues during the build. There's plenty of space inside the case. I think you'll be able to get long graphics cards in no problem. There's space up at the top for connecting EPS even after you've installed a radiator and fans. If you've used a Phanteks case before, especially one of the previous Eclipse generations, it's a very similar build experience in the new Eclipse G500A. I swapped out the fans on the AIO. I installed the radiator at the top, but I swapped the stock fans out for the M25 fans, and I also installed one of the 140mm M25 fans in the back of the case. So I think we've got a pretty balanced airflow with 3 140s in, 3 120s and a 140 out. I've run my usual thermal performance test on the G500A that I do in all case reviews. So it's a combined Cinebench R23 and 3D Mark TimeSpy extreme stress tests running simultaneously. If you want to check out the full testing methodology, head over to kitguru.net and there will be a review page for the G500A. There's also the full specifications of the case on there as well. With the case in its default configuration, both the CPU and GPU temperatures were perfectly acceptable for a high airflow mesh front case. However, removing the mesh front and the tempered glass side panels reduced both the CPU and GPU temperatures, showing that the G500A mesh front panel still produces some restriction in airflow, but overall it works well. Removing panels from the case reduced the CPU and GPU temperatures, which also meant that fan speed was lower. Therefore, noise output with the front mesh and tempered glass side panels removed is lower than in the default case configuration. However, in either configuration, noise output is tolerable due to the high airflow and relatively cool component temperature. So overall, it's not a bad case at all. The hardware support is very good, up to E-ATX motherboards. Big 40 series card should fit in here no problem. There's also loads of storage options with the G500A. It does offer good airflow from the front panel, although there is still some restriction there. Maybe enlarging the perforations in the front panel might improve the thermal performance even further. I didn't come across any major problems during the system installation. The build experience is very good, very similar to previous generation Phanteks cases. RGB lighting effects are very good as well. Like usual with Phanteks, they've been implemented really well. I like the 2 RGB lighting zones on the case. They're very well diffused. You don't get any hot spots in the LED lighting or anything like that. And the M25 fans as well, the lighting on those looks very nice. There's no LED hotspots that jump out or anything like that. They're very well diffused and easy to control as well with the 2 buttons on the case, or alternatively if you want, you can connect to the motherboard and use the motherboard software. And if you don't want the full RGB lighting effects, you don't have to buy the DRGB version. There is a different version with just plain black fans, and then there's obviously the fanless version as well. So you've got plenty of options with this case. However, the problem I do have with the case is the price. It does sound a little on the expensive side, especially when you take into consideration other cases that have launched recently, such as the Lian Li Lancool 216. That has very similar features to this case, similar RGB lighting effects, a similar amount of fans, but it is priced considerably lower. That's about £110. This DRGB version, you can pre-order this now for £150 almost, so it is a considerable difference in price. That money could probably be put towards a better CPU, better motherboard or better graphics card. So it is a very nice case, good airflow, good hardware support, but it is a little on the expensive side. So thanks for watching this review of the Phanteks Eclipse G500A. Let me know what you think of the case in the comment section. While you're there, if you've enjoyed watching the video, give us a thumbs up. Also, if you've not subscribed to the channel, make sure you do so today. And if you enjoy watching the content from Kit Guru, you can always help support us by heading over to the store and picking up some of the new merch. Or you could even subscribe to our Patreon. And as always, if you want to catch up on all the in-depth technical reviews, head over to the website.